They called me the Queen of Midnight. Velvet dresses, diamond heels, a voice like smoke. That was the image. But behind the gold curtain and the jazz horns, I ran more than a nightclub. I ruled a kingdom of deals, secrets, and shadows, tucked in the heart of a city that never slept unless someone put a bullet in it. Tonight, I'm going to tell you the story they never printed in the papers, the one they whispered about in alleys and back rooms, the story with blood on its lips and betrayal in its spine. This is about the night everything changed, the night I stopped being the queen and became something else. Welcome to the Nightclub Queen. Stick close, it's going to be one hell of a ride. It was a Saturday night in July, thick with sweat and sin. The doors of the Monarch opened at 9, and by 10 the joint was humming with bodies and bass. Red velvet booths, mirrored ceilings, gold-trimmed everything. The Monarch wasn't just a nightclub, it was a goddamn temple. And I, draped in satin and secrets, was its high priestess. I stood on the balcony above the main floor, nursing a glass of bourbon and watching the dance floor writhe like a living thing. Frankie Diamond's saxophone screamed over the speakers, and the air was hazy with cigarette smoke and perfume. Below, politicians clinked glasses with gangsters, and starlets laughed into the ears of hitmen. Everything ran through me. The booze, the girls, the drugs, even the songs got my approval before they played. I kept the peace, made the introductions, took my cut, and paid the right people to look the other way. From the mayor's chauffeur to Sal Gianni's enforcers, they all had a stake in the Monarch, but I was the one holding the cards. Then I saw him. He wasn't supposed to be here. Marco Bellini, slick hair, black leather jacket, and a crooked smile that spelled trouble in every dialect. He was a soldier from the north side, part of the Calderone crew. And the Calderones didn't come to my club unless they had a reason and a warning. He strolled through the crowd like he owned it, ignoring my floor manager's outstretched hand and heading straight for the VIP lounge. His eyes found mine on the balcony, and he gave me a nod, the kind of nod that meant, we need to talk. I handed my bourbon to one of the girls and made my way down the curved staircase, heels clicking like a metronome of menace. My doorman, Big George, gave me a look as I passed. He felt it too, that static in the air. Something was off. The VIP lounge was velvet-draped silence compared to the chaos outside. Cigar smoke curled in slow spirals as Marco waited in the corner booth, one arm draped over the leather like he was already part of the furniture. He didn't stand when I entered. Didn't need to. The tension did all the lifting. "Marco," I said, voice like silk over steel. "This is a surprise." "Didn't mean to crash the party," he replied, "but I've got news and a proposition." I smiled, but my gut clenched. Marco never came without an angle, and in this business, every angle cut like a blade. "Go on," I said, slipping into the seat across from him. He leaned in, lowered his voice. "There's talk about your guy, Tommy Russo. Word is he's been double-dipping, feeding intel to the DeSantis crew." My blood went cold. Tommy wasn't just one of mine, he was mine, my right hand, my lover. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just sipped my drink and stared Marco down. "You sure about your source?" Marco grinned. "Honey, I ain't never been wrong about a rat." The ice in my glass cracked. A tiny pop, barely audible, but it felt like a bomb in my chest. Tommy? A rat? No, couldn't be. Not him. I'd built this club with Tommy Russo. I'd trusted him with my life, my business, my bed. He knew where every body was buried. Hell, he helped dig most of the holes. I kept my face still, cold as marble. That's a bold accusation, Marco. You come into my house, toss that kind of fire around, you better be wearing a flame-proof suit. Marco shrugged, unbothered. Just passing along what I heard. From someone who don't got a reason to lie. Thought you might want to know before things get messy. He stood up, smoothed his jacket, and tossed a toothpick onto the table like it was a calling card. Word is, there's a sit-down being arranged. Not with you, without you. DeSantis wants to make a move, and your boy's opening the door. He started walking away, but stopped at the curtain. Oh, almost forgot. He turned, eyes sharp as razors. Tell Tommy I said hi, if he's still around tomorrow. And then he was gone. I sat there, staring into the swirl of my drink. The saxophone outside had turned frantic. Frankie always played like the devil had his soul on lease, but tonight it sounded like a warning. I didn't trust Marco, but I couldn't ignore him either. The Calderones were snakes, but they didn't bark unless there was a reason. And the DeSantis crew? They'd been trying to squeeze in on my territory for months. First the suppliers, then the girls. Now, my own man? I stood up slowly, heart pounding under layers of silk and self-control. I had to find Tommy, tonight, before this whisper turned into a war. But as I stepped out of the lounge, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A man at the bar, face half-shadowed, sipping from a glass he hadn't paid for. His suit was too clean, his shoes too polished. Fed? Freelancer? Or worse, a DeSantis scout? He was watching me. Not like a man watches a woman, like a wolf watches a rival predator. I moved through the crowd like a blade. Every smile I passed was a weapon, every glance a risk. The Monarch was packed, but I felt alone, exposed. In my own kingdom, the walls were beginning to whisper. And I knew one thing for sure. Before sunrise, something was going to burn. You don't just become the queen of a place like the Monarch. You take it, inch by bloody inch. I wasn't born into this life. I earned it. Every dollar, every scar, every whispered name they called me behind my back. My real name? That doesn't matter anymore. But back in 1958, I was just a girl with a busted heel and a voice that could make drunks cry. I came up singing in speakeasies and dive bars, traded sleep for gigs and safety for a shot at being heard. The first time I saw the Monarch, it was nothing. A crumbling theater on the corner of 3rd and Lavelle with a rusted marquee and a junkie passed out on the steps. But I saw the bones. I saw what it could be. Back then, I was working for a man named Richie Bellino, small-time bookie with big-time delusions. He paid me in drink tickets and promises, but he introduced me to the people who mattered. Sal Gianni, Al Three Fingers Cordoza, and most importantly, Tommy Russo. Tommy was sharp, dressed like Hollywood and talked like Harlem. He had a laugh that could charm your mother and hands that could choke a man out in an alley without creasing his shirt. He was muscle for Gianni, but he had dreams, bigger than loan sharking and numbers games. We started talking, then scheming, then sleeping together. It wasn't romantic, not at first. It was survival. Two strays circling the same fire. He told me he wanted a place, legit on the outside, action on the inside, a fortress. I had the look, the voice, the ear of every hustler in the borough. He had the muscle and the connections. Together, we found the money. Gianni fronted us with dirty cash and even dirtier terms. We took that crumbling theater and turned it into a palace. Opening night, 1961, I sang in a white gown under a crystal chandelier, and every crook in a 100-mile radius showed up to pay tribute. Cops, councilmen, union bosses, they all came through that door. And once they stepped inside, they were mine. But power doesn't come clean. It stains you. We let Gianni run his poker games from the back room. Cardoza lubed product through the basement. We skimmed the take, greased the right palms, and ran the show with velvet gloves over iron fists. Tommy handled the streets. I handled the books and the image. I became the face of the monarch. The press called me the Nightingale. The wise guys called me the Queen. They said I was untouchable. But there was always a cost. My family disowned me, said I was warring for gangsters. Maybe I was. I stopped going to church, stopped calling my sister. I got used to the nights alone, to the calls at 3 a.m., to the silence after deals that went sideways. I loved Tommy, in my own way, but I never trusted him completely. You don't survive in this life by trusting anyone too much. Except, maybe I did. Maybe I trusted him just enough. The monarch became the center of everything. Birthdays, deals, hits. If it mattered, it happened under my roof. And I ran it all with a cigarette in one hand and a ledger in the other. The club had rules. No guns inside, no rough stuff where the guests could see. If someone had to go, they went outside, in the alley or in the parking lot behind the kitchen. My girls were protected, my staff loyal, and my books always balanced. I paid off the inspectors, treated the unions right, and made sure the DA's wife always got a private booth. But even a queen has to kneel sometimes. The Giannis were always watching. Sal let me play boss, but he never forgot where the money came from. Once a month, I'd go to his house in Bay Ridge, sit on that goddamn floral couch while his wife made cannoli and his men counted the take. Sal would pat my hand and smile with those shark eyes, reminding me who really owned the bones of my palace. Tommy hated those visits. Said one day we'd buy the Giannis out, run everything ourselves. I told him to be patient, but patience wasn't Tommy's game. Ambition was. That's when things started to shift. Tommy began making side deals, at first with my blessing. Extra cash, some real estate, a little pressure on the docks. But then came the whispers. He was meeting people I didn't recognize, talking in corners, coming home late with explanations that didn't add up. One night, I caught him on the roof, talking low into a payphone with his back to me. When he saw me, he hung up fast, said it was nothing. I didn't press. I should have. And then there were the DeSantis. They came up from Jersey, flashier, meaner, hungrier. They opened clubs of their own, bought off a few judges, started courting my people. One by one, suppliers started switching sides. A bartender disappeared. One of my doormen turned up in a dumpster in Queens with his hands missing. It was war, quiet at first, but real, and the monarch was the crown jewel both sides wanted to claim. Through it all, I held the line. Kept the music loud and the whispers louder, smiled when I had to, slit throats when I didn't. But even I couldn't see everything, especially not what was coming from inside. The night it all blew up, the city was sweltering. One of those August nights where the air feels like soup and tempers bubble faster than whiskey. I arrived at the Monarch around 6. The place was half prepped. Lights still warming up, band tuning on stage, crates of champagne lining the back hallway. I walked through the main floor in a white pantsuit, hair pinned high, a cigarette burning between two fingers. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I found Tommy in the office, bent over the desk counting stacks of cash. He didn't look up when I walked in, just said, "We pulled 26 from the tables last night." I closed the door behind me. "I need to ask you something, and I want the truth." He looked up. His eyes, brown and hard as walnut, narrowed. "About what?" "About DeSantis." The silence in that room hit harder than a gunshot. He leaned back in the chair, exhaled slow. "Where'd you hear that name?" "I don't want games, Tommy. I want answers." He stood, walked to the cabinet, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. Didn't offer me any. That was the first tell. He always poured 2. "I've had conversations," he said finally. "That's not betrayal. That's smart business." My jaw clenched. "You went behind my back." "No, I protected what we built." He pointed the glass at me. "Sal Gianni's bleeding us dry. We've been paying him off for years, and he's only getting greedier. DeSantis offered an out, a chance to buy our freedom. You're making deals with the devil, and you're clinging to one." His voice was rising now, tight with heat. "You think Sal will ever let us go? He owns this place, owns you. I'm trying to change that." I stepped closer. "By selling us out to a crew that runs dope through playgrounds, they'll turn the Monarch into a goddamn slaughterhouse." Tommy's eyes flared. "At least we'd own it." I slapped the desk so hard the scotch spilled. "You went behind my back, Tommy. After everything, after all we built, you didn't trust me." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it. The guilt, and something worse. He didn't trust me. Not anymore. I turned to leave. He grabbed my wrist. "You don't get to walk away." I pulled free. "Watch me." That was the last time I saw the man I loved. What came after wasn't love anymore.
2 days later, I got the call. It was Vinny, one of my floor guys. Young, loyal, not too bright, but he knew the signs of trouble. Said 2 DeSantis hitters were spotted at a diner off 44th, asking about our supply runs, our rotation schedules, even what nights I personally showed up. That wasn't business. That was prep. I hung up, lit a cigarette with shaking hands, and stared out the window of my apartment. The city stretched out like a beast, golden and indifferent. I'd spent a decade carving my name into its belly, and now someone was trying to carve me out. I had to move fast. First, I called Big George and told him to double the door, frisk every guest, and keep the back exit watched. Then I called Al Cordoza, my last insurance policy. Al didn't like phones, so I met him at an old meatpacking warehouse he ran out in Red Hook. He was standing beside a hanging side of beef, smoking like the thing owed him money. "DeSantis is making moves," I said without ceremony. Tommy opened a door. "I need it closed." Al took a long drag. "You want him gone?" I hesitated. For the first time in years, I hesitated. "I want them gone. I want to make a statement." Al grinned. "Now you're talking like a queen." He agreed to back me. Muscle, logistics, a couple of heavy hitters flown in from Chicago. But his help wasn't free. "I want a bigger slice," he said, "and I want a seat at the table. No more side deals. I sit next to you, or I don't sit at all." I shook his hand. That night, I returned to the Monarch and began locking the place down like a fortress. The girls were nervous. Staff were jumpy. Everyone could feel it, the shift, the storm coming. And Tommy? He didn't come in. He didn't call. The man who once picked the flower arrangements for opening night, who used to wake me with coffee and jokes about taking over Vegas, had vanished. And I knew what that meant. He wasn't hiding. He was positioning. By Friday, I had my plan. A private event, just VIPs, old allies, made guys only. Invitation only. No press, no civilians. The perfect time to show strength. I stood under the chandelier in a crimson dress, holding a glass of wine and watching the room fill with men who smiled too much and trusted too little. And then, just past 11, Tommy walked in. He looked sharp, black suit, no tie, confident. And he wasn't alone. Behind him stood two men I didn't recognize, tall, cold-eyed, standing too close for comfort. He scanned the room, spotted me, and smiled like it was all a joke. I didn't smile back. I walked to the stage, tapped the microphone once. The room quieted. "Gentlemen," I said, voice smooth, loud enough to carry, "thank you for coming. I have just one announcement tonight." I raised my glass. To loyalty. Everyone drank. Everyone except Tommy. He was already reaching into his jacket when the lights went out. The blackout lasted 6 seconds, just long enough. When the lights snapped back on, Tommy's two shadows were on the floor, one bleeding from the throat, the other gasping with a hole in his chest. Cordoza's guys moved like ghosts, silent, fast, surgical. Tommy? Tommy had a gun in his hand, chrome and trembling. I stood on the stage, heart pounding, wine glass still raised like it was a goddamn magic wand. "Put it down," I said. He didn't. The room was frozen. Half the guests were already slipping out, pretending not to see. The rest were statues, no one wanting to pick a side too early. Mafia politics, timing's everything. "You want the crown, Tommy?" I said, stepping down from the stage. "Is that it?" He looked at me, gun shaking slightly. "You made me a puppet." "I made you a king," I snapped. "You just didn't know how to wear the robe." That's when Big George lunged. Tommy fired. The shot hit George in the shoulder. He went down hard. I didn't scream. I didn't flinch. I moved. The sound of the shot had cracked the spell. The band had stopped playing. Guests were ducking, scrambling, but I had eyes only for him. Tommy was trying to run. I chased him. We burst through the kitchen, past a line cook screaming in Spanish, through the back door into the alley. The night air hit me like a slap, hot, foul, alive with sirens in the distance. "Tommy!" I shouted. He turned, gun up again, but his hand was bleeding. Somewhere between the shot and the door, he dropped the magazine. I had no weapon, no backup, just rage. I walked toward him, slow, deliberate, like I was walking down the aisle at a wedding, except this time there'd be no vows, no forever. "I loved you," I said. "God help me, I did." He laughed, bitter and broken. "You loved control. That's all you ever loved." "No," I said. "I loved what we built, and you pissed on it." "You think they'll follow you after this? You think this ends with you on the throne?" "I know it ends with you on the ground." And then he lunged. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't cinematic. It was two animals in a cage. We fought, clawing, screaming, knees in ribs, fists in faces. He got the upper hand for a moment, slammed me against the brick wall. But I'd taken worse. I drove my knee into his gut, bit his ear, grabbed whatever I could. And then I saw the glint, a broken bottle by the dumpster. I grabbed it, and I drove it into his neck. The blood was hot, instant. He gasped, stumbled back, hand to his throat like he could hold it in. I stood over him, chest heaving. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide. Then he fell. I watched the life leave him. Didn't blink. Didn't cry. Not until I got back inside. The crowd inside had mostly scattered. A few regulars lingered, shell-shocked, clutching their coats like lifelines. Cordoza stood near the bar, face stone-hard, arms crossed. The smell of gunpowder clung to the velvet drapes. The monarch had survived shootouts before, but never one this close to the throne. I walked through the room like a ghost, blood drying on my hands. Big George was getting patched up by one of the bartenders, wincing but alive. Al met me at the base of the stage. "It's done?" he asked. I nodded. "You sure?" I saw his eyes go empty. He gave a low whistle. "Well, hell of a message." The truth is, I didn't feel powerful in that moment. I didn't feel like a queen or a boss or a legend. I felt hollow, like the music had stopped inside me. But I couldn't show that. Not now, not ever. I turned to the remaining staff. "Clean it up, quiet. Anyone asks, it was a robbery gone wrong. Nothing else. Got it?" They nodded. No one dared speak. Cordoza clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You know this means war, right?" "I know." "You ready for that?" "No," I said, "but I've got no choice." We burned Tommy's body that night. No funeral, no eulogy. Just a barrel fire behind a meat truck in an industrial lot in Brooklyn. I watched until the last flame died, the scent of betrayal still thick in my lungs. The days that followed were chaos. DeSantis made his move, fast and messy. He sent hitters to rough up our vendors, tried to turn my dancers against me, even had a bomb planted in one of our suppliers' cars. But he underestimated something. Me. Because whatever I'd lost in Tommy, I gained back in rage. I went cold, ruthless, strategic. I cut new deals with the Chinatown crews, pulled in Irish muscle from Hell's Kitchen, and made a quiet alliance with a crooked senator who owed me a favor from years back. Every DeSantis soldier who stepped foot in my territory got a message, a box with a white glove inside, my calling card. The monarch survived, barely. But the girl who used to sing under that chandelier, she didn't. That part of me died in the alley with Tommy. What remained was something sharper, hungrier, and finally, alone. I kept the monarch. For a while, anyway. DeSantis didn't last the winter. Too many enemies. Too many bodies piled up on his doorstep. One night he went to dinner with his mistress at a steakhouse in Newark and never made it to dessert. They found his teeth in a storm drain 3 weeks later. I didn't ask who did it. Didn't have to. The alliances I'd built held strong, at least until the next kingpin rolled into town. That's the nature of power. It shifts. It doesn't ask permission. The club ran like clockwork for 3 more years. Business was good. The music kept playing. People kept dancing. And I kept wearing the crown, even if it didn't fit like it used to. But something had changed in me. Nights felt colder, even when the club was packed and the band was wailing. I stopped singing. My voice, the thing that had brought me into this world, felt foreign now, like a relic from another life. I spent more time in the office than on the floor, watched the cameras, counted the money, trusted fewer people, loved no one. One night, I watched a young couple dancing near the stage. She had that same spark I used to have. He looked at her like she hung the stars. I couldn't help but wonder how long they had before the world took it from them. Before someone offered him a shortcut. Before someone whispered in her ear that power was better than peace. That night, I walked out the back door alone. No guards, no fanfare. Just me and the city. I went to the pier, where the water slapped against rusted pilings and the skyline blinked like a dying promise. I lit a cigarette, closed my eyes, and tried to remember what it felt like. Before the betrayals, the blood, the cold decisions. When it was just me and a song,
and the dream of a place where people could feel something real for a few hours. But even memories rot if you leave them long enough.
I sold the Monarch a year later. Not to another crew, not to a gangster or a front or some trust fund brat looking to play Scarface. I sold it to a businessman. Clean books, real permits, no body count in his wake. He turned it into a jazz supper club. Live music, dinner service, family-friendly on Sundays. The chandelier's still there. So is the stage. But no one remembers the deals cut in the VIP lounge, or the blood mopped up from the kitchen tile. No one remembers me. And that's how I wanted it. I disappeared like smoke. Left the city with a suitcase, a fake name, and a bank account padded by more secrets than the Vatican. Now I live quiet. Coastal town. Big windows, no clocks. Sometimes I hear a song on the radio, something sultry and low, and my fingers twitch like they remember the microphone. Sometimes I see a certain kind of man, sharp suit, easy smile, and I feel the ghost of Tommy brushing my shoulder. But mostly, it's peace. Empty, echoing peace. Would I do it all again? That's the wrong question. The right one is, did I ever have a choice? In a world like that, where power is currency and trust is a liability, you don't live a life, you run it. You survive it. You own it until it owns you. So if you ever walk into a club like the Monarch, glittering lights, velvet booths, the smell of danger tucked just beneath the perfume, look around. The queen may be gone, but her kingdom still breathes.